Greetings. Welcome to the first introduction to the channel High Point, Turning Point, Endpoint. The purpose of this channel is to analyze films holistically within the context of the franchises which they are a part of, meaning that every episode or movie builds towards a greater narrative and to determine how those pieces fit together. High point, of course, meaning where does a franchise take off, where is it at its best point. Turning point could either mean where a series improves, where movies are precipitously worse or get worse or just change inherently. And endpoint, the concept of that is to determine if a franchise has "we're not as welcome" ended unceremoniously or officially planned, whether or not that may be the case. And the idea is to determine which franchises went awry, when and where in the series, and to try to understand or ascertain as to why those franchises fell apart narratively, which movies kind of ruined the batch, you could say, and also to try to find, is there a perfect series? Is there a perfect trilogy? Often third movies and trilogies are deemed inherently the weakest of the series, but this series would like to see if, in fact, there are movie franchises where every film is either good or great, and perfect may mean that they're all great in their own right, or that they fit together quite nicely. But also could mean that each series improves upon the predecessor. And certain franchises that have taken long breaks, or haven't had a movie in some time, or have had consecutive, just poor entries to the franchise, we'd like to determine whether some of those franchises' movies can be saved, or if they have just reached their end point where they just can't come back from, where it's ruined, they've lost their audience, this is just a cash grab, there's no redeeming qualities in any of the entries at any point. And the format of this is that each franchise will be treated as a season like a series, and each episode will cover one entry in a franchise, or one movie. Each episode will cover one of the movies in a franchise, and those movies could be determined or designated as the high points of a franchise, either the best or a series of the best movies consecutively. Turning point, maybe they improve or they might get worse in some cases. And of course, endpoint. Endpoint is not necessarily applicable to every single franchise, because some franchises, of course, go on and on, whether or not they should. And some do have great quality entries all the way through, or maybe they even have a perfect ending, though of course we know there are some that overstay their welcome. And preview, there are definitely certain franchises I think this would be easiest or accessible to analyze, and one of them I would say is the Jurassic Park series. Of course, it's a timely choice because we have Jurassic World coming out, Evolution, or Rebirth, I should say. And that franchise, although I will treat them as one entity, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, I may make the argument, though, that it should be considered or looked at as two separate franchises kind of stitched together, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, obviously. The Alien franchise, and again, I will look at those, analyze them holistically, from Alien all the way to Romulus, which we're coming up on a year since that was released. And around September, October, I will delve into a horror franchise, possibly the Halloween franchise, although that would be quite an undertaking, and definitely a painful process for sure, in light of recent entries to that franchise. But other franchises I might look at would be the Rocky series, including Creed movies, which again I might separate, the Terminator franchise, which means I'll have to watch Genesis and Dark Fate, unfortunately, but I will do it just to complete the series. Pirates of the Caribbean, which is one of my favorites, and I will argue that what people say is the worst movie is not the worst, but the one people say is one of the best actually is the worst. Eventually, I'll get to the Dark Knight trilogy. Hopefully, by then, I kind of have a system or kind of in a groove by that point. And I'll definitely refine the process. But overall, for each movie, each episode, we'll look at the plot, things, the events that happen in the movie, the setting, of course, very important, time and place of the story. It's almost a character of itself. The characters in the film, of course, are key to driving the narrative forward, making the audience care about what happens in the film. And execution quality. Does the entry serve a greater purpose? Does it fit into the narrative? Does it actually keep the story going, or does it do damage to previous entries? Does it do damage to the franchise overall? Perhaps it actually helps and changes things forever, for the better, too. And also, each entry will still be viewed in the context of how it fits into the franchise overall. And to conclude, obviously, each of these are simply my opinion, my arguments. I will, of course, try to argue for certain films are better than others within a franchise, or that one or two may have ruined everything, that the worst franchise or movie in a franchise might not be the popular one, and that some franchises have actually been saved and redeemed, and some are beyond redemption for sure. And obviously, I'm going to try to keep these videos relatively short, of course, for my own attention span, as you can probably tell. Like, everyone's a bit shorter than I would like to admit. Certainly hard to keep. Whenever I see a video more than 10 minutes long, I tend to say, well, I just don't have time for that. And then I'll watch 2 or 3 hours of, 5 or 6 minute videos. So I do have the time. I just don't have the attention to devote to those longer videos. So I will also try to keep my analysis of each film under 10 minutes, which means I'll have to be pretty judicious with my time and not making all these mistakes and blanks and losing my place. But hopefully this series and channel kind of take off and people enjoy it and are able to make comments and interact and make their own lists of which franchise or which movies in the franchise that they like best and which ones they think are the worst. Is there a high point? Is there a turning point? Are there certain franchises that are at that end point? And is it possible to come back from those terminal positions? That is definitely the purpose of this channel. So hopefully you'll enjoy the upcoming episodes where I analyze the first movie, Jurassic Park. Thank you.